We're in Preston, Lancashire tonight, and welcome to you all and to our panel, the Conservative Education Minister, Sam Gyimah, Labour's new Shadow Foreign Secretary, one of the few people to start and end the week in the Shadow Cabinet, Emily Thornberry, the one UKIP Member of Parliament, Douglas Carswell, the Times columnist, Melanie Phillips, and the comedian, Russell Kane. And as ever, Facebook and Twitter, if you want to comment, our hashtag BBCQT, 83981, the text number. Push the red button and see what people are saying. Lynn Gettings, kick off for us tonight. Lynn Gettings.
Is it feasible to have access to the single market and still control our borders? If not, which is more important?
Which is more important? Goes to the very heart of what happens after the Brexit vote. Is it feasible to have access to a single market and still control our borders? Melanie Phillips, you go.
I believe that technically it is, but that most of the discussion has been about, for example, the Norway model, which is a group of countries in the European Economic Area which have access to the single market, but which adhere to the rules of free movement of peoples. And that's what most of the discussion has been about. I believe that it is possible to negotiate a deal with the single market without having loss of border control. I'm also led to believe, from what I read, that
a deal, sorry, access to the single market, meaning no tariffs.
Yes.
Just as we have at the moment.
I believe so, but I mean...
Why do you believe it?
Because I have been given to understand that is the case, but I'm phrasing what I say very cautiously, because for every expert you talk to, you find somebody else who says something different. And quite honestly, I think all of us are in a state of complete bewilderment, because every time somebody knowledgeable opens their mouth about this, you get a completely different impression. What I do think is that it's very tempting for politicians to go for the easiest option, to try and square a circle. There is clearly a potential conflict. There is clearly an absolutely potential conflict between the European Union rules that they lay down, which the core of which is free movement of peoples, and the single market. And we can all hear European Union officials saying you can't have one without the other. You're in a club, you have to adhere to the rules. So it's all a question, I think, it comes down to it's a game of poker. There are no absolute
just
rules.
A game?
Yes, it's a game of poker.
No absolute rules.
It's a turn of phrase, David, game of poker.
But the country voted. I don't know how many people in this audience voted Brexit, but I know that all the evidence is a lot of people who voted Brexit voted because of control over immigration.
Yes,
that was the reason they voted for it.
What I'm trying to say is this. It's a game of poker, and it all depends on whether our future Prime Minister, whoever he or she may be, is tough enough to give the European Union the impression that we are negotiating from a position of strength and that we have what they want. In which case, all bets are off, they will give us what we want. If, however, we give them the impression, this is my personal view, that we are weak, that we are divided, that we are timid, then we are giving them the opportunity to set the rules as they want them to be.
All right. Let's pause. Thank you very much. Pause for some moments. You're in the third row there, yes.
But are we now in a position to cherry-pick? We have voted to leave the European Union, so how can we now pick and choose the best parts of the internal market?
I quite agree, but
okay,
that's
hold
what
on.
I'm saying.
Let me
it's
put
all
it to
about politics.
Sam Gyimah, can you pick up her point?
Well,
can you cherry-pick?
A very good question. The original question is obviously whether we can get a deal around single market and not our free movement. Now, I voted for Britain to remain in the EU, mainly because I believe that opportunities for the next generation made it, on balance, the right decision for us as a country. Today, our country is divided, given the referendum result. A significant number of people voted for Remain, but the majority in this country voted to leave the EU. And on that basis, as a Democrat, difficult it is for people to accept. We've got to accept the referendum result.
Well, what do you think was the key to the referendum result? Was it immigration, or was it the political business of leaving the EU?
I think the key to the election result was that people felt they weren't being listened to. They felt there were these bureaucrats in Brussels.
What did they want? What do they want people like you to hear? I mean, they say they weren't being listened to. On what issue weren't they being listened to? On free movement, I think what it is that business as usual on free movement cannot continue. We've got to do something about free movement in any deal we strike with the EU. OK, and do you think, to go to the questioner's point, do you think we can have a single market and still control the borders, still control immigration?
I think we can trade in goods and services and negotiate a deal that is right for Britain. But it will require, as Melanie rightly pointed out, tenacity from whoever is Prime Minister in order to strike that deal.
OK, the woman in yellow up there in the second row from the back.
I think we're kidding ourselves that they're going to be prepared to give us the deal that we want. I think they're going to want to make an example of us, because if they don't make an example of us, it's going to be a domino effect, and one country after another is going to want to leave, and that would mean the disintegration of the EU.
Okay. Douglas Carswell, can you pick up on that point? Do you agree with her?
Let's be absolutely clear. We can have unrestricted access to the single market without being in the single market. In other words, a British company would have to comply with single market rules when selling to the single market. That doesn't mean we have to comply with single market rules every other occasion. And let me tell you why we could have access to the single market without accepting the free movement of labour. Already today, from non-EU Iceland to non-EU Turkey, there is tariff-free, unrestricted trade in goods. That exists today. There are many countries around the world, 27 other countries around the world, have increased their exports to the single market faster from outside than we've managed from within. So access to the single market is not the same thing as being in the single market. I think this may be where some of the confusion arises.
Answer her, what's the difference? She thinks you won't be allowed to do that. You say, it's easy peasy, we can just do it.
We already know that Angela Merkel very clearly said 2 days ago that we want a reasonable deal. The head of the German equivalent to the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry in Germany, made it quite clear that they do not want to put tariffs. And the reason why they don't want to put tariffs is very straightforward. Last year, we bought £60 billion worth of more stuff from them than they bought from us.
But why
they are
should
the principal beneficiaries of cross-channel trade.
We've heard that all during the campaign, but why should they suddenly say, well, you've gone, you can have exactly the same deal as you had before?
Because it's in the interests of German workers, French factories, Polish industrialists. It's in their best interest.
Emily Thornberry, do you believe that we can have exactly the same deal like Douglas says?
I think it's all nonsense. I think it's all nonsense. I think... I'm very disappointed in this result. I'll lay my cards on the table. You know, I campaigned really hard for us to remain in the European Union. And the reason that I did was because I thought that it was best for our country that we did remain in the European Union. I didn't think the European Union is perfect, but I think that it's best for our country. You know, but now, what we've ended up with is we've ended up with the Tory government who have put this referendum in front of the British people. They have no plan B. They have no answers to any of these questions now. They're the ones who put forward... You know, they said, oh, well, let the British people decide. And yet they had no plan in case the British people decided not to do what the Prime Minister wanted.
But Douglas Carswell has a reply. He says you can just carry on as before.
And I tell you what,
he says you can just go on as before.
You listen to Douglas Carswell, and then 2 minutes later... Hang on. And then 2 minutes later you listen to Boris Johnson, and then 2 minutes later you listen to Michael Gove. They'll all say different things because they do not have a clear idea of what it is they have done to this country. They have led us into this dark space, and they have abandoned us. And we do not know what it now means. And it's all very well for people to say, we'll negotiate a decent deal. And of course the Europeans will be very kind to us. We do not know that, and we are now in their hands. And as for taking back control of our country, that is not what has happened.
Douglas, answer this point, then I'll come to you.
6 out of 10 people in Lancashire voted to leave the EU. It's quite extraordinary that the shadow minister, there is still a shadow minister left in the Labour Party, a shadow minister should say that we should disregard the outcome. That is quite extraordinary.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that.
I didn't say that.
I'll come back to it. The man up there at the very back, with the spectacles, at the very back row. Yes.
I voted in, but the majority of people that I spoke to the day after and said, well, who voted out, I said, well, why did you vote out? And not one of them could give me a reason. They all said, well, you know, I was convinced that it would solve immigration problem. I'm not sure. So there's so, like the Labour lady said...
I think the man in front of you, who thrust his hand up, did you vote out? Yes, you explain.
Yeah, The reason I voted out is because when David Cameron went to renegotiate our deal with the European Union, I don't think he got what we wanted.
And do you some people think there's a kind of whiff of betrayal by the Brexit campaign. Do you think you're going to get what you wanted?
I think we are better off out of the EU because I think we have too many chiefs and not enough Indians where the EU are concerned. They're telling us what to do all the time.
OK. Russell Kane.
Well, as more of a layman, as far as I understand it, you can't have access to the single market. No, sorry, not access. You can't be in the single market and without having the free movement of labour. You have to have both those things together. Now, I'm in a bit of a weird position. Cards on the table. Yes, I did vote Remain. I think there's a lot of things wrong with the EU. I did vote Remain, but at the weekend I don't hang out in showbiz circles. I hang out with my cousins, my family. I still live near where I grew up. And there is no one amongst my family group that didn't vote Brexit. No one. And I can tell you now, I can dress it up for you, but I'm not going to. These people voted because they think there are immigrants coming over here driving wages down. This is what people are scared about in Essex, where I'm growing up. And this is what people are saying. And on the day of the vote, there were people, I won't say who, members of my family dancing around saying, they're going home, they're going home. These are carpenters, plumbers and labourers who think their wages are going to increase once these people leave the country. So if you join the single market and then we have free movement of labour, you're going to have a lot of angry people wondering what the hell they voted for in the first place. It was Boris and the likes that took us into this. It's absolutely disgusting today that the clown with a hammer has left the circus and the mess that he created and vacated the city.
We've heard from a number of people who voted Remain. Can I hear from some people who voted Leave, who rather share the view? You did, over there, yes. The woman in green there, yes.
Because I think the euro has problems.
Yes.
They can't control the borders. It does affect the EU and the profligacy and the rules of the EU. We have been a great trading nation in our own right, and we could be still. We can access other markets.
Do you think you're going to get what you wanted or what you voted for?
There'll be strong negotiation, but I heard that the French were a bit gentle on this immigration.
Anybody else who voted Brexit? Let's just stick with that for a moment. You, sir, down there, yes.
Yes, I voted Brexit, and I did so entirely on economic grounds, not migration grounds. Indeed, I hope that the UK government going forward will sustain our overseas budget, overseas aid budget. But, Mr Carswell, I, like you, voted to get out from underneath an EU that doesn't work. I, like you, I suspect, want to see hotshot trade negotiators sent across the globe to bring back lucrative deals to make us richer and more successful. But unlike you, I don't work for an odious individual who stands in front of dreadful posters.
Well, all right. OK. I want one more thing, because we've heard some people talking about why they voted Brexit. I'd like to hear if there is anybody who wants to point the point that you made about your family, that carpenters and plumbers saying when we have less people here, fewer people here, wages will rise. Do you agree with that, sir, you in blue?
Yeah, I'm a plumber, and
yes.
I see this across our industry.
Yeah.
That, you know, businesses just using cheaper lead, which is their choice, of course, but it is affecting our work.
Mm. And how did you vote?
Leave, sorry, yeah.
And what do you think will happen now? You can put your hand down, because otherwise you'll...
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, I think it can slow it down a little bit, I hope.
That's all. Do you expect immigration to stop or not?
No.
No, OK. And no, we've heard from you, I think, already. You in the second row, yes.
Yeah, I'm a little bit annoyed at how people keep on typecasting people who voted Leave. I know a lot of people who are highly educated, they're a broad range of ages, and I'm getting quite annoyed with it. I've got friends and family who I love on both sides, but I'm getting annoyed with what's happening on social media, people calling people racist and bigots. The people who I know who voted Leave are not like that, and I think the media's got a lot to ask for, really. It's further fuelling the divisions in society, and I think a lot of it is to do with the media, and it's fueling a lot of this.
How is it doing that?
I just think that what's being portrayed in the media is swaying a lot of people, and, you know, the different fractions now between the people who've left and the people who wanted to remain. It's just causing such a problem in society. I mean, we've got riots in Liverpool, you know, from far rights and far lefts. You know, we need to just unite together on this, whether you voted in or voted out. We need to unite together.
But, Melanie, is it possible for people to unite in that way, since the question they answered was so diametrically opposed to each other?
I think it's an issue which has genuinely divided people at a very, very profound level. I mean, I'm sure that many of you have this experience of family members who are at each other's throats, who are not talking to each other. And that's because I think that the issue is, first of all, very, very complicated. I think there are very good arguments. I'm a Brexiteer. I voted Leave. I think there are very good arguments on the Remain side. And it's because the arguments are so powerful on both sides, and because the stakes are so high, and it's because it goes to the very heart of how we see ourselves as a nation, how we see ourselves as a country in the world, what our worldview is. So I think it's a subject which is bound to inflame. But I do agree with you. I'm a journalist, and I'm reading the media the whole time, not just the mainstream media, but the social media. And the language is appalling on both sides. And it has definitely inflamed. If you have the amplification of appalling epithets being, the amplification coming from the media, so it doesn't just die away, but it's being reproduced. You have mainstream columnists calling people in terms of insects and dogs and vermin and sewage. That's the kind of thing that's been said of the Leave camp, and I'm sure there are insults on the other side as well we can talk about. So I think you're absolutely right. Language has consequences, and I think too many of us forget that.
I'll come to you, Sam. I'll come back to you.
Uniting the country after this referendum, I think, is the most important thing for the next Prime Minister. And when I say that, it's not just the social fabric of our country, which appears to have been frayed since the referendum, but actually keeping our United Kingdom together is also going to be absolutely critical. And that all plays into how we handle the negotiations. I think it's right that we don't rush into the negotiations. I think what we should do is agree our negotiating position as a country and have the Prime Minister go and really bat for Britain.
How do you agree? Sorry, I must stop you. How do you agree it as a country when people have completely different views? Or do you mean just that the Prime Minister should agree it, or the Tory party or something?
Well, I am back in, just to put my cards on the table, Theresa May for the Conservative Party leadership contest. I was particularly attracted to her view that we should create a government department specifically for Brexit with a minister, and they would make sure that we have a broad conversation and actually make sure we have the capacity to go out there and negotiate. I think that is the kind of approach, deliberate, careful, and tenacious.
But how do you unite those who felt passionately that the Remain campaign was the right thing for them and their families, and people who passionately feel that Leave and the control over immigration was the right thing? How do you square this circle? You can't just have one person, well, we'll do a bit of this and a bit of that.
Well, I voted Remain, as I said. The way you approach this is we need and should have a close relationship with the EU. But what it is in our interest to have reform around freedom of movement, just as it is for a lot of other European countries.
All right.
The challenges we face in free movement are faced by Germany, France, and many of our other European partners. And I think that is how we get them to our side of the table in order to negotiate.
OK, Russell Kane.
I've watched this happen in slow motion from where I'm living. The squeamishness of people to discuss immigration, in my opinion, is what led it to be a subject that's got the energy behind it. There's been a real lack of voices on the left that go, OK, there are lots of working class people suffering out there that are concerned about immigration. I hear what you're saying. It doesn't mean you're labelling someone racist or xenophobic just because they're concerned about immigration. They're just someone that's concerned about immigration. That should be addressed, talked about, it should be brought into open water and discussed. There's no one on the left. Where are the voices? Where are the voices on the left going, OK, particularly Labour, going, OK, the majority of people that traditionally vote Labour are terrified that their wages are being driven down by immigrants. Let's shout the argument from the rooftops and let's own it, and that would steal the energy from the right wing that have been discussing immigration in this debate and has led to so many
Where are they then, Emily?
I mean, I went up and down the country and listened to what people said, and, you know, from the view of London, it looked like the vote was going to go, you know, to Remain. But I was always very worried, and I thought that it was going to go the other way. And I went to Warrington. I remember I spoke to people when I was there. Again, I heard up and down the country from, you know, half of the country basically felt that the current system does not look after them. You know, you hear about this economic miracle, and half the country go, well, what economic miracle?
Russell's saying it's Labour's failure not to respond to this way back. I'm not going to hang on. Answer Russell Kane.
OK. I think that the way people talk about the threat from migration is they talk about, as the guy up the back there was saying, you know, they're worried about the competition, they're worried about being undercut, they're worried about people breathing down their neck, they're worried about, you know, that they have to work these hours and they have to work these conditions and they have to work for that level because somebody else will go cheaper. And, you know, we can provide a domestic answer to that, which is to have stronger rules about how we employ people. We need to have a higher minimum wage and we need to make sure that we have proper rights. I heard from other people, I heard somebody else saying to me, Emily, I'm fed up with the fact that I have 2 grown-up kids at home with me. They don't have anywhere to live. We've either got too many people in this country or we've not got enough homes.
But do you accept what Russell's saying, which is that Labour has not reacted and not responded to this?
Well, I think that...
You could have taken some of the heat out of the debate and gone, no, we're going to own the immigration debate and we're going to talk about it from the left, and it would have pulled the plug on some of the nasty rhetoric.
But I think that the way that I'm talking is the way that we talk about it from the left. I think it's about lack of access to resources. I think it's, you know, people feeling that there's too much competition for resources because there's not enough resources, there's not the public services. They worry about housing and they worry about jobs, and I understand that and I hear it.
Douglas Carswell, but just before you start, there was somebody there who attacked... Who was it who said about the poster? And Douglas Carswell, what was it you said?
You didn't like it?
I thought it was a despicable thing.
Which poster are you talking about? You're talking not about the bus or the breaking point?
I'm talking about the poster where Mr Farage was in front of a long line of migrants.
The breaking point one, yes.
These weren't Eastern European migrants, you know. This was, as I'm sure Douglas Wells knows, this was a very, very difficult and awkward...
But Douglas, did you stand in front of that?
I did not.
But you still stand in front of the 350 million one, don't you? The financial one.
Yeah, you didn't like that poster. I didn't like that poster. I criticised it at the time, and I criticised it on the night of the election when I was last being interviewed by David. And let me tell you why that poster was despicable and morally indefensible. As you point out, those were Syrian refugees fleeing a war going to Slovenia. It had nothing to do with the debate in this country. Secondly, I think that poster actually allowed the Remain side, who wanted to cast aspersions on the values and the integrity and the motivations of the Leavers, it gave them ammunition. But, you know, I've been campaigning passionately to leave the EU. I think people like me now need to recognise that, yes, we've won, but it was a very narrow mandate. And we need to try to reach out to the 48%, recognise there are good, decent, patriotic people who voted the other way. I listened during the debate to some people who made some very powerful arguments the other way. I think we need to recognise that we need a new consensus, and we can bring some of those people with us. If I could just... One final thing. I think that it's really important that we provide reassurance, first and foremost, to the 2 or 3 million EU nationals living in this country. I think Theresa May today cast doubt on their status. I think she needs to urgently clarify that all EU nationals currently living in this country must absolutely have their rights here absolutely enshrined.
Now, just before we... wait a moment. Just before we leave you, Douglas, you are the only UKIP MP in the House of Commons. How can you belong to a party led by a man who put out that racist poster, which you constantly complain about? Why don't you leave UKIP? You sit with Nigel Farage, or maybe you're planning to leave UKIP, but you can't be led by a man who you object to on racist grounds and still remain an MP.
Last time I changed from one party to another, I felt it was beholden... 2014. I felt that I had to put myself forward for a by-election. My constituents have faced a by-election in 2014, a general election in 2015, a referendum in 2016. I would think very carefully about inflicting another
Or
by-election.
maybe you should just change the name of your party.
Well, I do think...
Call yourself a Tory or something.
A leadership challenge, Emily suggests. Well, all the other parties
Everybody
seem to be
else
doing
has
that.
got
The Greens are doing it, Labour are doing it, Conservatives are doing it.
All right.
Do you know, I'm not sure...
No, we're
I'm
going to
not
move
sure
on to
which
another
MP I would back, though.
All right, well, let's just be serious for a moment. I mean, are you happy being led by Nigel Farage?
I made it very clear in December, in the run-up to this referendum, angry nativism is no way to win elections in this country. It doesn't work, and it's morally wrong.
We're going to be in Brighton next week. I'm going to just move